Hello and welcome to this lecture where we are going to see some of the X11 servers that are available for Linux environment, and we will also have a look at some of its configuration parameters, and in the end we will try to configure how we can access an X11 server remotely and some of the applications that are GUI based. Now you are aware that almost all the major operating systems nowadays, they have this GUI environment or graphical user interface where we have, windows, different windows like this one that you are seeing over here. They have menus options, then fonts are also there, which are managed by the GUI environment, and also pop-up dialogues. They are also managed by the GUI environment. Now in the world of Linux, this GUI, let me just write this one as well. GUI or graphical user interface, this is managed by X Windows system. So X Windows system, or we simply call it as X. Now the basic configuration of X server or X system, that requires that what kind of mouse we are using, or keyboard layout. It also defines the screen resolution and the video refresh rate. Also, what's the color depth and the video card that you are using in your system. Now some of these settings, they are automatically detected by the X server itself when you configure it. But for others hardware specific related parameters, you need to explicitly define those features and parameters in the X configuration file so that they are implemented. Now there are many implementations of X server available. One of them initially it was valid until 2004. It was very much in use, and it was known as X86 implementation. Since 2004, most Linux distributions, they have been using which we call as Xorg or X11, which is in fact a derivative from X86. But those Linux distributions, they parted their ways from X86 because of certain licensing issues. Now there is another product available which is commercially available, and it's called as Accelerated X, which is a product of Z Graphics. It's a corporation, and you can access this website at I believe zig.org, or maybe it's zig.org or maybe zig.com. You can check it out. I don't remember it on top of my head at the moment. I believe it's zig.com. Now what makes this Accelerated X stand apart from X86 or X.org X servers is that because this is the driver bases or the video drivers that have been written using Accelerated X environment, they are totally independent. So if you have got a particular set of hardware that may not be working or may not be properly working or displaying parameters using open source environments like these one, or I should say this one is not being used anymore. So you can try Accelerated X, and your hardware might work in a better way by using these drivers from Accelerated X environment. Now there is another standard coming up which is called as Wayland, and you can access it on freedesktop.org. Now this standard, it intends to counter for the shortcomings that were inherited when X86 was developed, or the shortcomings that have been inherited into Xorg because it was based on X86. You see, X386, it was way back in 1980s, and the video applications that have come up nowadays with a lot more features, they are not really comfortable and compatible with the applications that were written in that era. So Wayland applications, they are totally different and are independent of X Windows and won't be able to run on X Windows platforms. But X Windows applications, since there will be a layer of X Windows supported application in Wayland, the applications that have been developed in or developed for these X Windows operating system, they will be able to be executed in Wayland to provide backward compatibility, but that will be a kind of stopover arrangement. Now it is promised that Wayland based video applications, they will have simpler application design, better speed, and fewer video problems as compared to X server. Now to configure an X server, there are some tools available in the market, but one of the very basic feature that we can configure X server with, or the settings to provide graphical or GUI interface, is the X server itself. And for X386 based or Xorg based or Xorg based X servers, what we can really do is that for X386 the command is X386 minus configure, and for Xorg based system the command is Xorg minus is the switch, and then I type in configure. Nowadays all the major Linux distributions that are coming up in the market, they do not have specifically Xorg configuration files in there, because these configurations are generated at runtime, and it is envisaged that you really a common user really need not to tweak these settings, because as I mentioned that applications have been written in a way that they have become smart enough to detect the settings, to detect the optimal settings for your desktop environments or for your GUI applications. But for learning purposes and from certification point of view, you must know fields and features and the parameters that we need to define in Xorg configuration file. Now, if I boot up my Ubuntu operating system and or maybe CentOS, which is Red Hat based, they are a bit different. I would show you that there is no Xorg configuration file, but we can generate one, and to generate it you must restart your system into a non-GUI environment, and from there you need to execute this command. So if you are working on Red Hat based systems, the command you can use it is tell init or simple init as well, and then run level 3. While in case of Debian based systems, since there is no run level concept as such in Debian based systems, you can shut down the I would say the display manager if you are using XDM. Display managers we'll talk about in other video. Or if you are using GDM, which is genome based desktop manager, or if you are using LightDM, you can stop them by issuing the command sudo service, and I'm emphasizing sudo. I assume that you are using your own username and not the root credentials. So if you are using root, you do not need to add in sudo. You just need to type in the command service and then the name of the display manager, for example, maybe XDM. So I type in XDM and afterwards I type in stop. This will stop the display manager that is running and will take you to non-GUI mode. Once you are done with the configuration of Xorg file, you can restart your PC in either init 5 level, which is GUI 5 for Red Hat based distributions, or for Debian based distributions, you can start your display manager service by using service display manager, whatever you are running, and then the keyword as start. So I have booted up my Ubuntu machine in a multi-user environment without GUI, and I have issued this command which is xorg-configure to generate a sample x.org configuration file. So if I bring up my Ubuntu desktop in front of you and let me just go to places in home folder, because I created the file using non-root user. The user was ABC, which you can see over here. So the file that was generated has been placed in the particular user's home folder, which is in this case over here. So if I open up the file, let's just double click it, and it has been, kind of segmented into different sections. The first one is server layout, which defines the generality or general identifier, which is xorg configured, the server that when I booted up this machine in non-GUI environment. Then it also generated the files that are to be used for that particular configuration. For example, we can see some library modules, we can see some font paths that can be used for this particular X server. And regarding fonts, there is a possibility that you can define a separate font server that will be, providing fonts based X11 configuration for different computers. Like if you have got your organization or your education institute where you have multiple labs and many computers in those labs, and you want that instead of configuring fonts X11 server related fonts on all those computers, which would be definitely a hectic task, why not dedicate a computer, and whenever you need to install a new font, you install a new font in that server, and the clients, they will be getting the fonts from that server. So the syntax for that is something like, let me just pull up this one. So you define the font just like you have seen over there, and after that you can define whether it's TCP, and after that you give the path of the server. For example, it could be an IP address, let's say 111, and after that you define the port that server is particularly running on. So once you define that, your client computers, they go to that particular font server and get the fonts from. Then coming back to the configuration, we have this module section where you can install multiple modules. These have been automatically detected by the configuration file, but if you want to add certain specific modules, like you are using graphics card for high-end graphics performance, you can add those particular hardware modules for your box into these stanzas, and they are loaded by using this load command. Some of these modules are very specific to the hardwares, but some are generic. Like you can add Visa module, VESA, which is a generic module. Likewise, we have this input device section, which is for keyboard, and we can also see that we have this section which is for mouse 0. If you are using a very particular or very specific mouse that is not being detected or being working properly using this section, this generic section, then you might need to consult that vendor specific documentation on how to add that driver over here. Similarly, we can see that we have this driver for display, which is VBox video. Since I am using this virtual box environment to emulate or to run this virtual machine, which is Ubuntu, otherwise it would have over here different hardware that would be used for displaying purposes. So that's all there is to it as far as X11 or X.org configuration file is concerned. You just make tweaking and changes in this particular file as per your specific hardware, and in today's environment, today's Linux distribution, you really do not need to change anything. In fact, you would not even find this file in your home directory. It is generated by the system default, and it is not accessible in your folder. So you do not need to worry about it. You just need to remember, for exam point of view, that what are different sections and how you can tweak those sections as per your particular requirement. Now let me show you that how we can access X settings or X server remotely and some of the GUI applications running on a separate server by using different techniques.